Throughout the years, different genres of movies have had both positive and negative influences on our society physically, mentally, and emotionally. These effects vary throughout each genre of movie, as their goal is to spark different reactions from us and make us feel different emotions. People's opinions about three different genres horror movies, romantic comedies, and action movies vary. In a survey done in 2018, only 52% of the people in the US enjoyed horror movies, 75.5% enjoyed rom-coms, and 88% enjoyed action movies. Throughout this TED Talk, we will be diving into the way these movies affect us and how that determines our disliking or liking for them.
Horror films are obviously very scary, but there are many positive opinions and even benefits to watching these spine-tingling films. The first and obvious effect of these horror movies is the increase in heart rate and the rush of adrenaline that viewers get from watching these movies. These effects can be very appealing to some people, especially young people, teens to 20-year-olds. Stuart Fishoff, Professor Emeritus of Psychology at California State University, Los Angeles, and senior editor of the online journal of Media Psychology, stated that if we have a relatively calm, uneventful lifestyle, we seek out something that's going to be exciting for us, because our nervous system requires periodic revving, just like a good muscular engine. Young people crave these adrenaline rushes to make their life more interesting, so they watch horror movies. There was even a 1995 study that found that the higher people scored on a scale that measured sensation seeking, the more they liked horror films. Also, these horror films help young people learn how to manage terror. Another interesting fact about the reactions to this horror film is that distress and delight are correlated. So the more fear, anxiety, and worry the genre provokes, the more appealing it is to its viewers. Horror movies also provide a sense of pleasure to its viewers from the relief that follows. It's something called the cathartic effect. Viewers are offered an emotional release and escape from the real world of bills, mortgages, the economy, and relationships. In addition, horror movies always happen to have a predictable or neat end. This appeals to a large group of people who find comfort and joy in the simplicity of it. Horror movies are also very obvious when it comes to who the villain is, and even after the potential gore and high body count at the end, there is usually a relatively happy ending.
Rom-coms have many positive effects that emerge over the course of the film, starting with the moment the two main characters meet. This causes us to experience a little thrill, and if their interaction is funny enough, to make us laugh intensely, which can lower blood pressure. When the characters' relationship is building up, our empathy centers release hormones such as dopamine and oxytocin, which make us feel as if we are the ones falling in love. Sometimes we even feel what the characters are physically feeling, since when we're watching rom-coms, the area of our brains that interpret touch light up. Once we finally reach the happy ending, we normally finish in a better mood because we are relieved at the problems finally being solved. This resolution lowers stress hormones and makes it easier for viewers to sleep, specifically those with insomnia. When these movies bring up problems that we are experiencing as well, they can provoke a cathartic release that improves our mental health, since those emotions should not remain bottled up. By giving characters minor flaws and having them go through different struggles, we tend to like them more and identify with them. The realistic aspects of rom-coms make us more hopeful because we go through hard times in real life like those in movies where the main characters still get their happy endings, which is something many of us want desperately, and we begin to believe that we can have that too. Rom-coms show us how to be honest and vulnerable with those we care about in order to tell them how we really feel. Matthew Grizzard led a research team in conducting an experiment where one group of students watched rom-coms, another watched action movies, and the rest watched a ratio of rom-coms to action movies. The students took a survey after the experiment, and by comparing the results, the research team concluded that those who watched rom-coms had an increase in sensitivity for 4 of the 5 moral intuitions, which are fairness, loyalty, care, and respect for authority, in comparison to the rest of the participants. Another bonus of watching a rom-com with someone and talking about it afterwards is that it can save a relationship. Studies show that couples that do this are more likely to be together 3 years later, which can cause divorce rates within the first 3 years of marriage to be reduced from 24% to 11%. All in all, rom-coms are there for us when we do and don't believe in love, and they ultimately have a positive effect on us physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Of all the movie genres, action movies are the most liked. Superhero movies have a positive effect on our brain and our output on the world. First, there are many studies that show that audiences' brains sync when watching enjoyable action movies. In the audience, it has been proven that over 70% of brain activity was synced, specifically the part of the brain that processes sight and sound, but also the parts of the brain that control emotions. Also, action movies specifically provide positive role models and relatable characters for people. In fact, a study showed that Spider-Man was the most favorable character in all of MCU, with 75% of the people who took the survey saying that they were his favorite, ranking higher than even Captain America and Iron Man, with only 70%. This is because Spider-Man is more relatable to viewers, being a teenager struggling through high school, as opposed to Iron Man, a man with billions of dollars. These hero stories inspire people to get through their everyday lives. Because viewers love the characters so much, rough situations can trigger heavy emotional response and raise brain activity. The main characters in these movies always have flaws. This helps show people that flaws are okay.
Although there is a bright side to watching horror movies, there is a dark, scary side to them as well. Horror movies cause fear, worry, and anxiety in most viewers, which is very damaging to your physical and mental health. For example, when we watch an intense scene in a horror film, our heart rate and blood pressure increase. This can and does lead to heart attacks, usually in people with cardiovascular weakness. This is one of the reasons why we don't see many older adults watching horror movies. Another reason why they choose not to view these horrifying films is because, unlike younger people, older adults tend not to seek out experiences that make their heart race. In their opinion, real life is scary enough. Also, if you get scared while watching horror movies, your adrenaline and cortisone levels spike, which can dredge up repressed traumatic memories. This is because the change in your brain reminds you of a time when you were in a similar state. So if you have a horrible event in your past that terrifies you, a horror movie can literally make you relive it. Finally, compared to all the other movie genres, horror movies usually don't make the top cut. For example, Nightmare on Elm Street and The Exorcist each got only 6 mentions from 560 people surveyed. People who are 50 and older usually never name a horror film as one of their 25 favorites. Only 0.2% of this group named a horror movie in their top 25 favorite movies. Also, the genre accounts for only 3.2% of the top films named by people 13 to 25, and 2.3% of those named by 26 to 49. The reason for this is because usually, when people enter a movie, they anticipate to be entertained and to feel good when it's over. For horror, they tend to leave viewers nervous and unsettled, no matter the catharsis. This state obviously doesn't lead to fond memories.
Although romantic comedies present many positive aspects, they also influence us in negative ways. Rom-coms make us overly trusting since they portray the idea that we shouldn't listen to our intuition when it tells us something is wrong. Rom-coms romanticize certain things that shouldn't be romanticized and perpetuate harmful gender dynamics and gender stereotypes. Studies show that watching this genre of movies makes women more likely to accept aggressive and overly persistent behavior from others, with the belief that it is because they care about them, making them vulnerable to harm from those they believe they can trust. It also shows men that if they are persistent enough, they can win someone over even if that person has said no many times, which isn't a good tactic in forming relationships. After watching rom-coms, we make unrealistic assumptions about relationships and are eventually disappointed by them. This is because we are convinced that our partners always understand our emotional states, and we expect them to have the reaction we deem appropriate. We also begin to believe in the concept of soulmates, which limits our openness to being with other people, since we believe that there's only one person out there for us, and makes our heartbreak even worse when that relationship ends. Rom-coms make new relationships seem carefree and more important than those that last. Intimacy seems easily attainable, when in reality it takes a very long time to create human connection. Those in movies also forgive serious mistakes such as cheating far too easily, which is a red flag in real life and can lead to an unhealthy relationship. Since rom-coms portray commitment as boring and full of arguing, they make our relationships throughout our society less committed and trusting. When focusing on ourselves, we begin to allow rom-coms to tell us what we should look and act like, which is detrimental to our mental health. By constantly watching rom-coms, we are letting this genre brainwash us into setting impractical expectations for ourselves and others based off of what they want us to believe, instead of trusting that we know how to handle love.
While there are many positive effects of action movies, some negative effects can also be found. While people look up to heroes, some people see the villains as more realistic and relatable. This can cause people to think about committing violent acts and acting like the villains in real life. In the study showing the favorable Marvel characters, the most famous villain, Thanos, ranked higher than many of the heroes themselves, with 30% favorable. Also, action movies can come across as saying that violence is cool. For example, Transformers movies mainly show that combat and destruction has no consequence. Action movies can also have many discriminatory underlying lessons. Many superhero movies have mainly male characters. However, this is not really an issue anymore. Also, the Lord of the Rings movies have underlying racist lessons. In the movies, they say that the ogres are evil just by being ogres, and also some characters are considered brave just because of their blood. Clearly, that can give people many racist thoughts, even if the viewers don't realize it. Finally, these movies show that the solution to dealing with issues is to be more powerful.
We can ultimately say that movies are a large part of our culture today and have many large effects on society. Different genres have many different effects on people's brains, actions, and personalities, which is why people enjoy different genres of movies. By focusing on both the purpose of movies and the way they affect us, we are able to figure out why everyone has different preferences and understand the pros and cons of every genre. Thanks for watching our TED Talk.